Recently, Apple released the iPad M2 version, the 2022 iPad. And with that new M2 chip, I am assuming that it's a lot faster, quicker to do editing in particular for video and exporting, which is a good thing. And I would think that the latest, greatest chips would make that a much more efficient and better experience. Now, I don't have one, I have a 2020 iPad, but the weird thing is, even with my 2020 iPad, it's quick, it does it well, but I rarely use it. If you listen to this podcast much at all, you know that I have talked about iPads in the past and how I love the idea of an iPad, but in practice, I almost never use it. And so while the new iPads, the latest, greatest iPads look to be really good, the specs are amazing, I'm not here to talk about that. I'm here to talk about why I think iPads are great, but they're a luxury item that, at least for me and probably you, don't get used near as much as they should. Maybe is that the right way to put it? Or that they could. They sound great on paper, but in reality, I don't use it. Hey guys, Blake Calhoun, and another episode of Almost Professional, the podcast about mobile filmmaking, DIY filmmaking, indie filmmaking, really all things filmmaking. And today we're talking about iPads as it relates to, well, filmmaking, or at least video. Let me be clear though, I am not bashing iPads. I'm not here to say they're bad, not in any way, shape, or form. As a matter of fact, they are amazing. They're amazing tech. It's just that what they're pitching them, at least on the pro side, the iPad Pro, I just don't know how many pros actually use it in the way they're intending. It still is more of a consumer device, even the iPad Pro. Now, that's not to say pros can't use it and don't use it. They do. But everyone in my circle, anyway, pretty much is like me, meaning they don't use it to its potential. I'm not sure that's the right way to say it, but they really aren't using it as an everyday machine for sure, or even if at all. I saw a tweet from Mark Settle, a BBC journalist. He's a Mojo trainer, mobile journalist trainer. And his tweet was pretty funny, and it was very apropos for what I'm talking about here. And that was another big week for using my iPad Pro. And the graphic showed 0 minutes used. And this is pretty much my normal use too. Sad but true. Now, again, I'm looking at it from a pro user point of view. Someone who makes a living using a computer or an iPad or a phone or whatever. They make money with it and they use it on a regular basis. And again, to me, that's how Apple is pitching the iPad Pro now. If you, again, listen to my podcast or watch my other YouTube channel, my iPhoneographer's YouTube channel, you know I'm a big proponent of LumaFusion. I'm not a regular user of LumaFusion, but I love it, and I really like what they're doing, the direction they're going. But again, I don't use it on a regular basis, but I keep thinking I'm going to use it. Every time a new iPad comes out, I keep thinking I'm going to start editing all my videos in LumaFusion. And it's nothing against LumaFusion, and that's kind of a key takeaway here, a key point. LumaFusion is great. I mean, they have video scopes now. They have all the tools you would pretty much need to make a video. I mean, that and more. They have now very good audio tools. They have a lot of new effects. You can now stack LUTs. I mean, they are really making improvements to that app. It's a great app. For me, though, ultimately, it's about folder structure and media management. It just doesn't work for my type of videos. I shoot a lot of video. And so I need to be able to break it down into folders. And yeah, you can do that using the Files app. And of course, you can connect SSD drives, and that's what I do. And you can break the footage down in that too. However, again, within the app, it doesn't work like my brain is used to on my iMac or, on a laptop, a traditional computer setup. And that goes the same for media management. They're kind of one and the same. It's just hard to manage large amounts of media. And so social media or short form content, I can see it being used more. But for me, it's just never really stuck. And again, I'm not dissing LumaFusion. I think it's a great app. I'm surprised kind of that I don't use it more. The main time I use it is when I travel, and I don't travel much anymore. And that goes for my iPad as well. I watch movies on an airplane or in a hotel room with my iPad 'cause it's a 12.9-inch iPad Pro. So the screen real estate is great. I do occasionally edit in LumaFusion. But again, I can't decide whether it's worth spending $1,300 on a device like that I just rarely use because I use my computer 99% of the time. I have an iMac and then I have a MacBook Pro. And I don't know if it's just a habit or if it is just, again, because I'm used to that and I have to learn to use an iPad, or maybe, and this is what I've been thinking, and I've said this before, but I'm really believing it is to be true now. It is just such an in-between device. It's a luxury device that really doesn't have a place necessarily yet in our everyday productive lives as content creators. And I can't believe I just said that. I hate that phrase, content creators. How about filmmakers or photographers or photo editors, graphic designers, that kind of thing? And I have tried to use my iPad a lot, again, in my everyday work. I've tried using it as a monitor and it works well. There are different apps you can connect to your computer or even to a traditional camera and use it as a monitor that way, or use it with Sidecar to your professional monitor when you're editing. Use it as like a preview monitor. And that is actually pretty cool, but I rarely do it. It's a little bit of a pain. And so I don't do that very often. But it's a great feature to have. And that's kind of the other point. All these things are great and they're great features to have, but I just rarely use them. And so I'm just debating whether I can warrant recommending them for guys like me or you who probably do this as a living, or you have a YouTube channel, etc. Does an iPad, or where does an iPad fit in that workflow? For me, it doesn't really fit in anywhere at this point. I'm forcing it to fit in. I'll get to that in a minute. And since I got the larger iPad Pro, the 12.9-inch, it's really too big to use as an everyday email device or checking Twitter or any kind of social media. I use my phone. I use a 14 Pro Max right now. And so that's big enough on its own. But the iPad Pro is just too big. It's kind of unwieldy in your hands. Maybe the 11-inch would be better for that, meaning everyday kind of stuff on an airplane, or even, you're sitting on your couch checking email. That's not why I would buy an iPad personally, because they're just too expensive. If I was going to do that, I'd buy a much cheaper version, the iPad Air or whatever. I think you can get it for like half the cost or thereabouts of a iPad Pro. And so right now, what I really use it for, and again, I mentioned that I force myself to use it, is I've got it set up next to my iMac on my desktop, my main editing setup, and I use it to record voiceovers. I went and bought an audio interface, and so I connect a Neumann mic, a really expensive XLR mic, into my iPad Pro, and I use Meta Recorder, and it works great. I record my voiceovers into that, and I love it. However, I don't do voiceovers that often, and then I'm connecting it right next to an iMac, so I could technically use my computer. The other thing I do is I like to preview my YouTube videos that I've edited, and I edit primarily in Premiere Pro on my iMac. I like to preview my videos on my iPad because that's the way most people watch. I do it on my iPhone as well, but I like to see how the contrast, colors, etc. look, because on my iMac, it's a 5K Retina display screen. It looks great, but often it doesn't look the same as it does on my iPhone or my iPad. And then I also have a TV in my office that I look at it on a traditional TV. So I look at it in several different ways. And so that is helpful. But again, is it worth having an iPad Pro to preview your videos and record voiceovers? I don't know. That's pretty iffy. But I have it, and so I want to use it. I've already bought it. Again, mine's a 2020, so I've had it a couple of years. And again, I really like the iPad. I'm just struggling to find an everyday use for it, and I can't be alone. I know there's other guys out there, like Mark Settle, I just said, and Patrick Tomaso, another guy that I follow on Twitter, and you probably know. He has the same feelings, or similar feelings anyway, about iPads. I don't think he loves them. He has a love-hate relationship with them. And speaking of professional editing and color grading, along with this new M2 iPad, you probably heard DaVinci Resolve is now coming to the iPad. And the rumor is it's going to be like $99. and it'll have similar functionality to the desktop version. Seems like a pretty good deal, especially if it has similar functionality and has the cuts page and then the color page. I personally don't ever edit in DaVinci Resolve, so the editing part doesn't really matter to me. I use it for color grading. I usually will export an XML out of Premiere Pro, take it into Resolve, do it that way, or I might do a one-off shot here or there, import it into Resolve. Resolve is excellent for color grading. It's the best there is, in my opinion. I don't use it a lot though, because I can do most of that in Premiere Pro, but I do like Resolve a lot. And so will that get me to use my iPad more? Unlikely. Because if I'm going to color correct something more high end, I'll just do it on my iMac or my MacBook Pro, more than likely. Again, unless I'm out in the field or traveling, it'll be interesting to see if DITs, those are the guys that do color correction and color grading and media management on set during shoots, if they'll embrace the iPad version of DaVinci for smaller shoots anyway, because again, you run into media management and such. But I know that Blackmagic and others are pushing cloud workflows. Frame.io is big right now. Well, it's been big for quite a while, but you can connect Frame.io to LumaFusion, or you can connect it to Premiere Pro. And you can even shoot now from your iPhone using Filmic Pro into Frame.io. And of course, you can do it with larger scale cameras and do proxy workflows. That could make me use it more. And I have used it some in that respect. But as an everyday tool, I'm not so sure. That's where, again, I'm bumping. You're getting kind of niche here when you're talking about doing what I'm talking about. DIT work is probably a pretty small segment of who uses DaVinci Resolve. And then especially because it's usually for higher end shoots. You're shooting on Red or Arri Alexa or whatever. And so if they're running proxies, you could do that and then go into Resolve and then take that on your iPad and then go and take it to the desktop. A lot of possibilities there. But if they ever get to the point in my lifetime, my working lifetime, to where we can actually edit from the cloud using 5G or whatever comes next, then I could potentially really see using my iPad more. Because then the media management technically is done in the cloud and you're just editing from the cloud. Again, you can kind of do that now with Frame.io. You can create folders in Frame.io, which is in the cloud, and then bring them into Premiere Pro or LumaFusion. It's still, though, you typically download the proxy onto your device and then work from it that way. But if you could actually do it while you're streaming the media, that would be cool. That would be a game changer, to use a cliche. And then, of course, the elephant in the room when it comes to Apple and editing is Final Cut Pro. Will they ever make a Final Cut Pro version for the iPad? I got to believe they will. There are rumors circulating that they're revamping Final Cut Pro again. And I don't know if they're going to do the huge revamp like they did from Final Cut Pro 7 to 10 that everybody hated initially. Now a lot of people love it. Although I think people that love it didn't really edit in Final Cut Pro 7. They started editing in Final Cut Pro 10. And if you learn that way, great. For me, I learned on Avid and then went to Final Cut. And then Final Cut Pro 10 just sucked. Didn't work at all for me, and I still hate it. I'll use it if I have to, but I just can't wrap my head around how that works. I mean, don't get me wrong, I know how it works, but I don't like the magnetic timeline and all that. Again, I'm used to a more traditional editing experience from Avid to Premiere Pro. So I use Premiere Pro and I like Premiere Pro. And by the way, as a side note, that's one thing cool about LumaFusion. It's kind of a combination. You can use the best parts of the magnetic timeline with the aspects of a normal insert and overwrite editing experience you might get with Premiere. So again, I do like LumaFusion, but I just don't use it much. I do like DaVinci Resolve. Will I use it? I don't know. I'll probably buy it and give it a try. Final Cut Pro, that would be cool. I don't know if I'll use it though. And would all the Final Cut Pro users port over to an iPad? I have my doubts, I really do. Again, once they figure out that it's kind of hard to do media management and the folder structure and all that, even connecting an SSD to your iPad, it's not the same. And it's especially a beating if you're working with a lot of footage. Like you're not going to edit a movie, let's put it that way. You're not going to edit a movie, at least I wouldn't, in an app like that on your iPad at this point in time. So what about you? If you're watching this on YouTube, let me know in the comments below. If you're listening to me on Spotify or Apple, hit me up on Twitter. Let me know if you use an iPad Pro and do you use it regularly. I think the main people that use it regularly are the mobile journalists. and YouTubers. Guys that do more short form stuff, I believe, probably use it more than guys like me that do more long format. Now, I do YouTube videos, but my YouTube videos are pretty involved. They're usually about 10 minutes long. They take 2 or 3 days to edit, tons of layers, tons of effects, and I crank them out once a week. And so I've got my system in place using Premiere Pro on my iMac. But that could change. I'm obviously open to change. But for me right now, it really is more of a luxury. Sometimes it's a paperweight. And lots of times it just looks cool on my desk, but that's an expensive device for those purposes. Let's put it that way. Again, I love iPads. There's a lot of potential there. They're amazing devices. They're Swiss Army knives, kind of like your phone, but they don't replace a laptop or a computer for me yet. And I don't see it coming anytime soon, although who knows what the future holds. Now, I guess I'll go record a video or maybe preview a video, maybe this video I'm recording right now. So at least I feel like I'm using it. Well, this has been another episode of Almost Professional. I'm your host, Blake Calhoun. Thanks for listening, and I look forward to talking to you in the next episode.